Have you ever been in a casual conversation, maybe grabbing a cup of coffee or tea and chatting with a coworker and sensed that there was something deeper beneath the surface? Maybe they mentioned a feeling of overwhelming or questioning what life is really about. And you think in your mind, "Ooh, is this the right time to talk about my faith?" But what if in that ordinary moment was exactly where God wanted you to share truth with your friend? Let me share a quick story. A few months ago, I was talking with a friend who seemed perfectly fine on the outside. We laughed, we chatted about daily life. But as the conversation went on, she quickly admitted she was struggling with loneliness, struggling with purpose in life. She didn't ask for advice or prayer, but just opened up to me. And this was a huge step that didn't give me time to prepare a speech, but I knew that this was a time where God had brought me into a spot where I needed to talk to her. And I shared just some of the similar seasons of life that I went through where I doubted. That simple, honest sharing sparked a conversation that led to ongoing talks about faith and hope. Moments like these happen all the time, and we often overlook them because we don't realize these are opportunity or pinch points where we can share our faith, where we can invest in someone else, really in simple disciple making. Many believers believe that disciple making requires formal settings, perfect timings, a flawless plan. That mindset can freeze us up and cause us to miss divine appointments happening every day. In the middle of everyday conversations, opportunities can come up. And today I want to show you how disciple making can be as natural as any chat that you have without the pressure or the awkwardness that might go with it. Think of disciple making like turning on the radio. If you only listen to loud signals, you'll miss the subtle frequencies. These spiritual cues God is already broadcasting to you everyday interactions. So how do we become better listeners and better intentional disciple makers? And here are 8 practical ways to spot and engage these moments. First, tune your ears to spiritual cues. These would be pinch points, is what we call them in our church. People often hint about their struggles, their doubts, their lack of hope without saying it outright. Really listening means catching these subtle signals. For example, a friend might say, "Man, life's been really hard lately." Or they might say, "I just know what the future holds." These are divine openings where you can gently offer hope from a godly perspective. I remember a time when a coworker shared with me about their feelings of loss because they had a painful breakup in a relationship. Instead of rushing in, I listened and simply said, "Man, that sounds hard. I found that God can bring peace in those seasons in my life." And it opened a door to deeper conversations. But not only do we have to watch for pinch points, we actually need to use our story as a bridge. Your own faith is one of the greatest tools. When someone shares a challenge, you can naturally connect by briefly sharing how God helped you through a similar situation or a similar challenge. For instance, when a colleague expresses anxiety or uncertainty, you can share how you trusted God and how He brought peace in times of uncertainty like you've experienced. This invites authenticity without preaching. A third way is ask thoughtful and open-ended questions. Instead of rushing to answers or telling your story, try questions that encourage reflection. Questions like, what gives you hope when you feel that things are hard? Or have you ever wondered if there's more to life than this? Help people open up and engage. This shows that you value their perspective, that you're listening and not just trying to win a conversation or to teach them something. A fourth way is to connect everyday topics to God's story. Almost any topic, work stress, family struggles, current struggles, can be a doorway to spiritual truth. If someone talks about a difficult relationship, that's a chance to discuss grace and forgiveness. When injustice happens in the news, which happens all the time, you can talk about how we are part of God's kingdom and He is just. The key is gently framing real life issues within a God is bigger story of love, where God is the hero. But not just those four. Here's a fifth one. Be patient and respectful. Sometimes it's not good to jump right in and say something. Timing matters. Not every moment is right for a spiritual discussion. Sometimes people need to feel heard first before they're ready to talk about faith. Learning to read the room. Listen to others, their emotional state. Listening to them spiritually builds trust. And sometimes simply by being present and praying for future opportunities is your role. I recall sitting quietly with a friend who was grieving. I didn't know the right words to say. I couldn't fix what was happening. But just being there made a difference, listening. And when she was ready, faith became part of our conversation. Number 6, pray for eyes to see and words to speak. Disciple making isn't something we do in our own strength. Make it a daily habit to ask God to open our eyes to the moments where He's preparing and to give you the right words at the right time to say. Prayer aligns our heart with God's mission and prepares us for the unexpected and the powerful encounters that we can experience. Number 7, practice small acts of kindness. Do the one another's of Scripture as conversation starters. Simple acts of kindness go a long way. Maybe a helping hand. Maybe a helping hand, a listening ear, a word of encouragement. These things can open up the door for deeper conversations. When people see Christ's love live through us, they're more open to actually hear about the hope that is behind our actions, that is at the heart of our action. And this is powerful. Number 8 is follow up and continue to build that relationship. Disciple making isn't a one-time interaction or conversation. It's a journey of walking along someone, listening, sharing, praying together. After maybe an initial spiritual talk, look for ways to stay connected, inviting them to church, inviting them to activities where you can become better friends, sharing helpful resources that God is teaching you, and maybe even checking in with one another and how it's going. Consistent relationships build the beautiful ground, a good soil for faith to grow in. Now pause for a moment. Can you think of a recent conversation where you sensed that God was at work? What did you say or do? How could have you responded differently? Maybe taken advantage of that opportunity to be an example of Christ. Disciple making doesn't have to be daunting tasks or scripted speech. It's actually about being present, listening, and speaking the love of God in moments where God has placed you. He is already working in the lives around you, and He wants to use you in your everyday conversations as channels of His grace. Now, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear the opportunities that God gave you and maybe opportunities that I can pray for you. Maybe share one of the most unexpected moments of what God was using, an ordinary conversation where you got to share truth. Or what about a challenge that you face in making disciple making that maybe I could make a video about? I could do some research and talk to some other disciple makers where we can learn together to be better, intentional disciple makers. That is why this channel exists. That is why we try to share truth together. My prayer is that God would use you to continue to make disciples in this generation because that is God's commandment. That is why we're here. God bless. Know I'm praying for you. Bye.